Alright, I think I goofed ahorita. We're already starting with Spanglish. I think I goofed earlier, and this is actually the second time I'm recording this. I'm not sure if what I recorded earlier was actually through the microphone. So, the built-in microphone for my computer, or the actual microphone that I have. Whatever, we're just doing this again. Hey, maybe I don't stumble on my words too much this time around. So, take two, welcome back. Happy 2021 for everybody. It's currently January 2nd, and I actually wasn't planning on doing any New Year's resolutions for this year. But then yesterday I started reflecting upon it, and you know how everybody was saying 2020 sucked. And in general, globally, it did suck. But that does not mean that for me personally, it was a terrible year. Sure, I did have a bunch of low points in the year, especially low mental health days. But that does not mean that 2020 wasn't good for me. I think it was a good chance for me to step back and reevaluate what I was doing with my life. So, I wanted to go over some of the positives that came out of 2020, at least for me personally. As I think I've mentioned before in other outlets, I don't know if I probably mentioned this in my other video, my Spotify Wrapped video, but 2019 was, I think, the hardest year of my life so far, and that's a lot to say because 2020 came after. But for me, 2019 was basically the point in my life where I stepped into adulthood, I guess. And by that I mean is that, I started living alone, I got a full-time job, I started commuting, like a bunch of new experiences for me started in 2019. And as a result of that, I came into 2020 very mentally and physically drained. So 2020 started with a very rocky start for me. I was in a very low place. I was having constant anxiety, panic attacks. I wasn't eating well. I had lost so much weight throughout 2019. I was unhappy generally with what I was doing with my life and how everything else was going, like with relationships and everything. So that's all at the start of 2020. So like when quarantine started, it was a sort of relief for me because I was given that time, that recovery time that I hadn't been permitting myself to have. So quarantine basically forced me to distance myself from everything that was, affecting me negatively. So with that in mind, let's go over the positives, like my list of positives. Because of quarantine, I firstly was able to rediscover my passion for creating. I was given that space and time that had basically been non-existent over the course of 2019 because, I was just too busy with my full-time job to be able to maintain that, as well as my presence, my online presence, or just creating in general. It doesn't have to be for online purposes. I just wasn't even able to draw or do anything that made me happy, in other words. So that was a major upside of quarantine. I was able to go back to what I used to like doing a lot, and that helped me greatly. Kind of tied up to that, I actually garnered up the courage to leave my toxic workplace. Like I was saying, and in 2019, I got my first time full-time job, like on-site full-time job. And at first it was a very positive experience. Like I met new people, I experienced new things that I was actually able to incorporate into my stories and everything. It was all positive. But the thing is that it wasn't supposed to be a long-term gig. I was just supposed to be working there for a few months, or at least that's what I had planned. I had just wanted to fund the conventions that I had planned out for the rest of the year. I had a convention in 2019 that I was going to participate in, and I decided to get a job to fund merch and everything. So that was the main goal, and I also wanted to have something to do while my younger sister finished up her studies. So it was all supposed to be a transitional job, not supposed to turn into a entirely full-time job that required all of my attention. It wasn't supposed to be like that, but that's what it ended up being. I ended up staying there for over a year, basically. And although at first it was great, by the end of 2019, I was so tired. The management went from great to super bad. The amount of toxicity and anxiety that this job was giving me was just too much. I feel like it was literally draining me, and I think you could physically see it taking its toll on me. So much so that my younger sister was actually worried for my health and everything, and she had to intervene in a few occasions because I just wasn't well rested enough to actually work and everything. So although I basically took up the whole quarantine pandemic situation as an excuse to leave my job, I was already planning on leaving it because I had already acknowledged that I just wasn't happy. It wasn't bringing anything to me as a person anymore. So I left. It wasn't the best time to do so, but it was the best time to do so for me personally and my mental health. And that's something that I hadn't been considering until this year. Thirdly, I guess I got a taste of love, even if it was short-lived and not what I envisioned. That was, remember that rocky start of 2020 that I talked about? Well, this was mainly the reason why, on top of, toxic workplace and everything, it all just happened at the same time. So that was obviously not good for me. But, you live and you learn. You have to go through certain things in order for you to learn and know better and everything. So in that regard, I, appreciate this experience. In every other regard, I do not. And I just want to get over it. And 2020 gave me that time to get over it. It gave me the distance that I hadn't realized I needed for me to cope and recover. So that's something. Another thing that happened during 2020 that I'm very grateful of is that I was able to rekindle friendships and, friendships that had not entirely just fallen through. You just, those friends that you don't contact that often and then eventually, just don't talk to anymore. Not so much because anything happened, but because you just don't talk to each other anymore or don't have the chance to interact. Well, I was able to reconnect with some of those, as well as stay in contact with others that have, hadn't lost contact with me before, but, I think that obviously the quarantine and not being able to see anybody obviously made people turn to other ways of staying in touch, and I do appreciate that. Every one of you that actually reached out and talked to me and contacted me and stayed in touch during these times and still continue to do so, I deeply appreciate you. Thank you so much for reaching out and talking. I feel like the friendships have to be a sort of mutual thing. A lot of the times I've felt, and not specifically about these friendships, but with other friendships that have fallen through or that I've had to leave behind, it's been because I've felt that I have been giving much more than what I've been giving back, and it's draining. I know that some people can't help it and everything, but I also need that reciprocated friendship. Okay, I also need that validation, because. And I do understand, because sometimes I feel like I'm coming on too strong or everything, and I understand that could be both ways. But, we all have to make an effort. So That's what I meant. So rekindling friendships, and I also left behind those that were causing me harm. Yeah, I'll leave that one at that. But that's what I was talking about, mutual conversation, mutual reaching out and everything, that sort of thing. That's what I meant with leaving those that harmed me behind. Another positive was that I was able to reevaluate my priorities, and I worked on placing my mental health above everything else. That kind of ties to the toxic workplace environment and everything. I at times I just didn't realize how much it was affecting me until I was able to take a step back and evaluate everything. So I'm glad that I was given the time and space, even though, obviously it wasn't intentional. I was glad for that space because I was able to auto-reflect on everything. Moving on, I also finally had the time to go back to old hobbies like video games and watercolor, but also I was able to take on new hobbies like yoga and cooking. Yoga and cooking have been a great help for me to not only keep my mind off current world events, but also it just gave me the time to stop thinking so much about work, because when you're working from home and you're doing everything yourself, it's obviously kind of hard for you to disconnect, especially when, for example, I don't have a proper office room. I just work from my own bedroom, so you can obviously understand how it's hard to switch from, okay, I'm working now, to I'm done for the day. You never sort of disconnect. So by doing yoga or taking the time to think of a new recipe and something, it was really helpful for me. And then you have video games and watercolor that I just hadn't had the time to actually enjoy anymore, given my full-time job. With video games, for example, I had bought Breath of the Wild in 2019, but I hadn't been able to play at all until last year because of the constant hustle of working. Even though you had days off, you were always either never able to fully disconnect from your job, or you were just too tired to do anything. So obviously not everybody has the privilege or the liberty to be able to work from home or leave a toxic workplace. But if you do have the chance, please do, and always put yourself before everything else, because that's no way of living, honestly. Again, coming from a place I get from privilege, to be able to say these things. But this last year were special circumstances, so I don't know. I'm just grateful for the time that it gave me to reconnect with everything that I had left behind. So career-wise, though, since I started freelancing again and working from home, being my own boss and team, I guess, I was able to relaunch my Patreon page, which I had closed earlier during 2020 because of lack of time, and I was able to rebrand and relaunch with rewards that were better thought out for the current world circumstances. No physical rewards or anything. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do the postcards thing that I used to do, but just things that were a bit more manageable, because Patreon had gotten to be a bit too overwhelming. It was too many rewards to go through, and I was able to simplify the page a bit more so that it worked better for me now, and not so much the me from a few years ago that was able to take on a lot more work. I also opened up an online store because after the conventions were canceled, I decided to open a store, specifically a print-on-demand store, so that I didn't have to spend too much money on the production and having to ship everything myself. So a print-on-demand store was a lot more easier for me to handle. And then lastly, I was able to go back to updating my webcomic regularly, which was something that I hadn't been able to do during the past year or so, because I just didn't have the time to work on so much on my comic with my other job, I don't blame myself for that. Obviously, I was just too tired to work on anything else constantly, but I do involuntarily compare it to... I hate people. I do involuntarily compare it to when I first started working on my webcomic in 2017, where I actually I think I finished like 3 chapters in the first year, whereas in 2019 I barely did 1 chapter. I didn't even get to finish a chapter. I started it and I left it, and I felt so bad about that. So this last year I was able to finish finally that chapter and start a new one. So I'm actually grateful for everybody that waited for me to finish that comic and for me to, come back to it. I'm really grateful for the readers that are on the Discord server for the webcomic and everything, and contact me and talk to me through there. Thanks for being there and for waiting for me and everything. Another positive was that I discovered a bunch of awesome creators. These creators really helped me, especially at the end of the year, where I was not feeling the most positive, and they were able to brighten up the more bleaker days. So I just started watching a bunch of streamers, and it was just something to look forward to, something to keep me preoccupied when I was trying to look for motivation, and just something to listen to while I was working to as well. So thank you so much for everybody that kept on creating during 2020 and sharing their content on the internet, because it really did help. And then lastly, I wrote down that 2020 gave me the time and rest that I needed to recover. I think I kind of covered that last point throughout the other positives. But yeah, I just needed some rest. I needed to take my time, distance myself. I really did need all this time for me to be able to jump back on my feet after what had happened during 2019. Nothing in particular, it just had been building up, and I just hadn't had a proper vacation or time off. Nothing. I had been working constantly for a full year, and yeah, I had been planning on going on taking a break, but then with this that happened, I eventually decided that it was just time to go. So the rest and recovery resulted in all of that. So alright, so those were the positives that came out of 2020. I also wanted to talk about New Year's resolutions. To be fair, I didn't want to talk about I didn't want to impose any New Year's resolutions for this year, or for 2021, because these 2 years, as you can clearly imagine, haven't been going as planned. A lot of the resolutions that I had placed for myself during previous years, I hadn't realized that were very dependent on how do I say it, outside circumstances, or circumstances that were out of my hand. Like for example, in 2019 I had planned on traveling, but then I got a full-time job and unexpectedly, so I wasn't able to freely travel or anything. Not that I travel all the time. The point was that I wanted to like at least travel once, visit family and everything, but that didn't happen. And then in 2020, my other goal was to meet new people or something like that, with thinking that I was going to be able to do that through my workspace and everything, or through other friends that I have met while working. But that obviously fell through as well because social distancing and everything. So I didn't want to make any New Year's resolutions for this year, just because it's just very, very frustrating and unmotivating to come up to the end of the year and notice that you haven't been able to, or never were able to, complete any of the resolutions that you had placed for that year. So, but then yesterday I don't know, I reflected upon it, and I decided that I could keep up with some resolutions if I decided to go on with it, if they were directly concerning me, I guess, directly involving me. What I meant is like for personal growth and everything. So I came up with a few things. They're mostly like habits that I want to incorporate into my life that I started doing during 2020 and I just want to carry on doing. So like the first one, I wrote down that I want to keep up a regular yoga routine, because that really, really helped me during, lockdown and everything too. And it also helped me to give me a chance to step away from work, as I've mentioned already. Yoga gave me the time to like clear my head of everything, and it's really helped so far, especially like the breathing, exercising and everything. I actually have to do that later, but it's helped me a lot. And I kind of want to combine the yoga with actually working out and doing cardio. This is the second resolution, by the way, I at least want to strive to work out at least 2 to 3 times a week, which is something that I had been doing some years ago, and I tried to start doing during 2020, but it fell through. Again, with those fluctuations in motivation, at one point I just stopped doing it, but I want to try and reincorporate that into my routine, because like yoga, it gives me the time to breathe and to think about non-related work things, and it helps me feel awake, So I'm either gonna combine or do both, or how do I say this, or switch from one to the other as the week goes by. I'm still working that out, or just do one or the other each day. It really just depends on how I'm feeling that day, or how, or what I think will benefit me better from day to day. The third resolution was to pick up a new hobby. I was actually gifted some yarn during Christmas, because I had mentioned to my mom that I wanted to start doing some crochet, or learning how to crochet, and she's really into the hobby, so she was very enthusiastic and bought me a bunch of yarn. So I really want to try and pick that up, not only because I think that it's fun and I want to do something apart from drawing. I want to do something else that's creative, and have something that I can like physically give to somebody apart from art. I don't know, I just want to change things up a little, expand my abilities a bit more. And I thought that crochet was a good option, again, because 1, I would have a personal teacher, and 2, I would be able to connect a bit more with my mom as I learn the art. Another thing I want to try is like latte art and coffee making, I guess. I learned a bit about that in my previous job. But I don't know, I just want to fool around with that a bit more. So either crocheting or coffee making, one or the two. I want to be at the very least competent by the end of 2021. Now this next one, the fourth resolution that I have, is a bit of a reach, but I figured, hey, that I might as well at least set a goal for myself for me to strive towards, because I think I'm more goal oriented. I like checking things off, to-do list and everything. So I place this goal. I'm gonna try and get to that goal. My major goal for 2021 career-wise is to finish up my webcomic Straight D's. I think there's at least one other chapter left. So like 2 chapters, including the one I'm writing now, of the nitty-gritty story, and then there's an extra chapter afterwards that I plan to do with like aftermath, like a prologue sort of thing. Prologue or no, like an epilogue, sorry. But I just want to finish up the main story. So that would be like 2 chapters this year. I don't know if I'll be able to, but at the very least, I just want to keep up with regular updates. I just want to set that goal and see how that goes. And then there's another resolution that I didn't include here, but I used to be able to read a lot. And when I say a lot, my goals were usually like 50 books per year. And most of the times I was able to meet that goal. Although these past few years have been a bit hard, and I've had to hustle at the end of the year to meet that goal. And last year I wasn't able to complete my goal, even when I added comics to the mix. I'm not sure if some people don't count comics in their Goodreads reading list. I do, because I kind of alternate between novels and comics. But I feel like last year I read a lot more comics than books, and I kind of want to go back to reading books, establishing that. So at the very least, and this is a very low bar goal for me compared to other years, but I think I've fallen out of practice with reading. At least 1 book per month, at least. I think I'll probably be able to overpass that goal, but set the bar low, start from there, and see how it goes. That's all I'm asking of myself. And then lastly, and this one's not so much of a habit, but something that I want to work on personally, is to not let others' expectations rule over how I live my life. Because I feel like these past few years, I've been striving to try and meet others' expectations and live and make the choices that other people expect of me. And it's driven me into a corner. It's deprived me mentally. I've been at my lowest, not so much last year, but in 2019, start of 2020, I was at my lowest, and I don't want to go back to that. I want to do what I like doing. And that means that I have to place my opinions and my thoughts and my decisions before everybody else's. I don't know if I'll be able to do it, but I'm going to work hard to do that, because there are circumstances where, you obviously have to consider what others think. But in the end of the day, it's my life, and I have to actually, as much as I put into consideration others' thoughts and opinions, I should also put into consideration my own thoughts and opinions when making decisions, and not just others. So that's something I want to work on. And I don't know if I'll accomplish that, but I'll keep that in mind as I go into the new year. So as you can see, most of my resolutions are kind of habits I want to incorporate. So I'll be trying to do a monthly habit tracker. I'm not into journaling that much, so I'll probably just download a template and do that and just mark it off. But the fact that I'm just marking something off gives me that satisfaction of to-do lists. So maybe this will help me keep being persistent with these new resolutions / habits that I'm trying to incorporate, and maintaining them throughout the year. So, let's see how that goes. All right, second time going through this, second time recording, second time that I think that outside noises are gonna be heard in this recording, because I'm not in my usual recording spot, right next to the highway. God, oh my God. I don't think I'll be able to fix that. I don't know, guys. Thanks for listening so far. If you do have any New Year's resolutions for this year, let me know. And going into this new year, please don't be too hard on yourself. I know it's kind of hard to set a positive mental attitude at the start, right after leaving 2020. I know 2020 left a lot of us like very wary of the future, but take it one step at a time. If you don't want to make any resolutions, that's fine. I didn't want to do them either up until a few seconds ago. But just think that even if you don't want to commit to any resolutions, at least leave the door open. You can set mid-year goals and still feel accomplished at the end of it. It doesn't have to be from the start. You can go one step at a time. Take it easy, and walk into slowly as, come into terms with the new year. It's fine. It's totally valid, okay? So, no, thanks for listening so far. Happy New Year, everybody, and I'll see you guys later.